Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic. Men of Reddit, what do you think is more painful than childbirth? According to several studies, being on fire. 89% of people on fire have said they would rather be having a baby. The 11%. My goals are beyond your understanding. Kinda rude to be asking them questions instead of help putting out the fire. Acute radiation poisoning. Fun fact, it's impossible to administer painkillers effectively. Once your body starts decomposing with you still alive inside of it, there's nothing but pain left. Man, that was so fun. What a fun fact to read. Getting flayed alive. Flayed alive, flayed alive. Feel the skin breaky and you see the muscles shaky. We're flayy alive, flayy alive. Being skinned alive and covered in salt. That's gotta qualify, right? Edit, your offerings of karma are much appreciated, mortals. Now if we're getting technical, I think so. Imagine they put some paprika or red chili flakes on top of that. Dinner's ready. My wife thought the last month of pregnancy was worse than giving birth. She said giving birth was more painful for that day, but the constant tiredness and back pain was a worse experience for her. Makes me think of all those people, especially old people, with long-term ailments having to go on each day with pain. Pregnancy is so much worse than childbirth, for me personally. If I could go through childbirth twice instead of 38 weeks of pregnancy, first 2 don't count, followed by childbirth, I might have another kid. But yeah, it does say a lot about chronic pain. It's super dependent on the person for sure. I was very lucky in that pregnancy was a breeze for me, some discomfort, but nothing too intense. I worked out up until a week before my daughter was born. I didn't really feel held back at all, not even morning sickness. Childbirth though. 20 hours of active labor, mostly back labor, non-medicated, was the worst pain I've ever experienced x 1000. It felt like my spine was being pulverized, and with every worsening contraction I just knew that it was only getting even worse from there. I literally still have nightmares about it. Acute radiation poisoning, the level that you get from holding cobalt-62 long, or what killed Daglia and Sloty after the demo core incidents. Just watch Chernobyl on HBO and see what the radioactive graphite did to the firefighters that touched it. A quickly spreading burning over your whole body just to be tricked into thinking you're getting better for a few days, and then your body literally begins breaking itself down. It is literally like going through all the pain and agony of dying from the worst kinds of cancer, but condensed into a few weeks. And without the ability to use painkillers since your melting cells can't even hold them. Cluster headaches. Also known as suicide headaches. People will kill themselves just to stop the pain. It's horrible. Edit. Thanks for the rewards and DMs, but I personally don't suffer from this. My wife does though. She often talks about ending it when she has an attack. Luckily she hasn't done anything yet. But in all honesty, I wouldn't blame her if she did. It's horrible to go trough, even more horrible to watch knowing there's fuck all you can do. Yeah, that's the one I was looking for. Here's a fairly disturbing clip of a dude documenting one of his episodes as it's happening. My understanding is most people who have gone through both consider it significantly worse than childbirth. Jesus, it's a 22-minute long video of a dude suffering. I'm a burn survivor. In 1973 I was involved over 85% of total body surface, 15% of that total was 3rd degree, meaning all layers of skin were burning. My shipmates put me out with a mattress cover. I spent the next 18 months in hospitals. After becoming stable, about 2 weeks, I underwent daily debridement of dead tissue. Lowered into a stainless steel T-shaped tank filled 1/3 with saline. The nurses cut away all the bandaging and then using scissors and scalpels cut away all the detritus. If you ever need to torture an enemy agent, burn the back of their hands till all the skin is black. Rip off all that dead skin and wrap the tissue in gauze soaked in sterile saline, and wrap that in Morkling bandage. Wait 24 hours. Dip the hand into salt water and remove all the bandage to the layer of gauze. Rip the gauze off. 1 finger at a time. I promise the agent will give you every truth he knows. There's no way they could put you under for all that. Burn survivor here. No, they can't. I asked the same thing. The explanation I was given is that aesthesia gets exponentially more dangerous as you continue to receive it. RN here. It's generally not feasible with the frequency and duration of dressing changes. Analgesia is provided, and inhaled analgesics are often on hand, but some people prefer to avoid the nitrous oxide as depending on the nature of their injury combined with the pain can cause an emotional response that can be incredibly distressing. Sadly, burns are probably one of the most painful, difficult to manage and heal, and high-risk wounds you can possibly sustain. You're always balancing risks too. Sedation carries lots of risks as well. My mom had to get her wisdom teeth removed as a teenager without any aesthetic, and she told me that was more painful. That sounds like a torture technique, not a medical procedure. My aunt had hers removed while pregnant, emergency, without anesthesia and no pain meds after the surgery, and she said the birth was better because getting a baby fills you with positive hormones, but during labor it was a comparable amount of pain. Wife said kidney stone was at least the same as childbirth, natural, maybe worse. I gave birth twice without an epidural twice. Second time the baby was partially breached and got stuck in the birth canal. Meaning I pushed her head out of my cervix and it partially receded back into me because the body couldn't come out after it. So the baby's whole body was just stuck in my cervix a while until the doctors broke some of bones so she'd be more malleable so they could maneuver her out. Having a full-term baby stuck in the cervix is not pleasant. Especially not in an induced labor which has artificially strong and persistent contractions. But I have also had gallstones, and I will say, as many women have, that they were more painful than childbirth. I believe kidney stones are too. Or at least most women say so. I agree with gallstones being worse pain. I've had 4 children and can't remember the pain of childbirth, but I definitely can recall the pain of gallstones. Maybe because I knew the pain would end after my children were born, but I had no idea what was happening or when the pain would stop when having a gallbladder attack. Sawing of a limb without anesthesia. Not so fun fact. This was the way amputations were done through all of human history up until the invention of modern anesthesia less than 200 years ago. There were of course various herbal aids, and some parts of the world had opium from poppies, but those are not at all comparable to what we have today. In the Victorian period, one of the most highly revered talents of a surgeon was being able to saw very quickly. A doctor named Robert Listow was famed as the fastest knife in the West End, and hopeful patients would sometimes camp outside his office with the goal of getting him to do the sawing. He actually had a fascinating career, and multiple books have been written about him. Here's an informative article. Fun excerpt. Occasionally, Listow's speed and showmanship actually were a hindrance to his operations. Once, he took a patient's testicles off along with the leg that was being amputated. His most famous, and possibly apocryphal, mishap was the operation where he was moving so fast that he took off a surgical assistant's fingers as he cut through a leg and, while switching instruments, slashed a spectator's coat. The patient and the assistant both died from infections of their wounds, and the spectator was so scared that he'd been stabbed that he died of shock. The fiasco is said to be the only known surgery in history with a 300% mortality rate. Is this a big band saw or some dude with a hacksaw taking his time? I feel like this is important. Very important. As a meat cutter, I've seen guys lose multiple fingers to a bandsaw and they act like it's nothing until 5 minutes later, then it starts to hurt a little. A clean cut like that won't be nearly as painful. I imagine stillbirth would be even worse. Suffering the physical torment and with any mental anguish that's normal, but the emotional pain of stillbirth on top of that. Yeah. I imagine that to be quite unbearable. Edit. To any and all who do not agree with this position, try and remember one thing. The question posed what was more painful, not what was most painful. That's something of an individual perception that's hard to agree on, no matter who you are. You're right. Thank you for acknowledging that. They have to push down on the mother's stomach after giving birth to get some of the excess blood out. Multiple times. Think CPR but on the stomach. My wife said that was 10x worse than the birth part. I'm going to go with that. Or that first shit after labor. Constipation due to painkillers and meds combined with the recent trauma down there. It's bad. Like really bad. Especially after stitches. Oh, the passing of the placenta. With my first 3 births I had an epidural, so I don't remember that part as much because the happy hormones are rushing you after baby is out. But with my 4th baby, I had her in the car, no epidural, and by the time we go into a room for examination clean up it was probably 40 minutes after birth. They gave me Pitocin to get contractions going to get the placenta out, and I'll never forget that nurse just going to town on my stomach / pelvic area to push that placenta down. Absolutely awful experience. Could feel it all again, but the happy hormones weren't there because it was already nearly an hour afterwards and they were wearing off, and what was coming out wasn't a cute little potato I could cuddle and stare at. I have given birth twice, both times unmedicated. Strangely, the first time I thought the stomach compressions and birthing the placenta was worse than the actual birth, but the second time the whole placenta thing was easy. My only guess is that I was exhausted after a 20-hour labor and 2 hours of pushing for the first, while my second was a 3-hour labor with 15 minutes of pushing, so I was way more fresh and energetic at the end.